Hello, my name is Shayla Favor, and I have the honor to serve as a member of Columbus City Council. Welcome to the Housing for All Second Annual Housing Forum. Housing for All is a rallying cry, an acknowledgement that housing is a human right. It is not a dream that can be withheld from those whose circumstances have fallen short of perfection. Columbus is at a critical point in our city's history. We are expected to grow by 1 million people over the next 20 years. And while this unprecedented growth creates opportunities, with it also comes challenges. We've seen other communities let this growth overtake them, but that can't be the story of Columbus. This housing crisis is real.
Studies have proven that the creation of affordable housing can boost local economies and help residents become more financially successful in their lives. We need more housing options across the spectrum for residents of every economic status so that they have the option to live, work, and play right here in the city they call home.
We have to prioritize innovative and creative policies to advance tenant protections and housing rights for Columbus residents.
As a daughter of immigrant parents who relied on our home as a safety net for our entire family, I understand the impact that owning a home can have for a family. And that is why we cannot truly talk about housing without discussing the need to create pathways towards home ownership for vulnerable populations.
That's why in 2021, I championed the first Housing for All legislative package, which focused on dismantling the systems. This was the first of many steps we're taking to make our housing market inclusive to all. And earlier this year, City Council announced a plan to strengthen this work with a suite of policy initiatives and programs focused on building more housing units, preserving our current housing stock, and the inclusion of all Columbus residents.
Housing for All began with 3 protections in 2021. In March of 2023, Council assembled to unveil a 12-piece policy package to strengthen those first 3 pieces of legislation. And this year, we will expand on this work through more policies and programs that support and protect our residents. Everyone deserves a place to call home and a place where they too can dream.
We need more housing production of all types and sizes. We need single-family housing to multifamily housing, from 4-bedroom apartments to studios. But even more than that, we need to push further and find creative solutions to bridge the lack of housing production.
More affordable housing is needed for Central Ohioans of all ages, but especially for aging residents with extremely low incomes. It is imperative we prioritize these single-family homeowners in disenfranchised communities by creating programs and initiatives to allow them to age in place.
We are proud of our city and excited about the growth that's ahead. But it will take all of us working together to ensure that we all can live stable and healthy lives with a safe roof over our heads. Housing is a complex, multi-layered issue, which requires complex, multi-layered solutions. There's an old African proverb: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. To solve this housing crisis, we need everyone to be part of the solution so we can create seismic change for generations to come.
Columbus's future depends on ensuring that every resident has access to safe, affordable, and stable housing without financial barriers. The COVID-19 pandemic exposed the devastating consequences of even a single surprise expense for many families, leading to instability, evictions, and homelessness. Columbus can and should be a leader when it comes to housing, and that means investing in home ownership opportunities, allocating more resources for emergency rental assistance, and increasing accountability for landlords. The pandemic shed light on inequities and gaps in the housing system, but also revealed the resiliency of our community. Together, we can transform our city's housing landscape for the better.
If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, y'all heard it, man. That was powerful right there, wasn't it? Man, want to say hello and welcome to the second annual Housing for All Forum. Please get out a round of applause, y'all. Yeah. My name is City News from iHeartRadio. Throwback 105.3. You can catch me on there each and every day from 2 to 6 p.m. and on 106.7 The Beat on the weekend from 3 to 7 p.m. And I don't say my name for you to give any applause. You can hold that. You know what I'm saying? I'm not that important. You mean clap just a little bit. You know, just a little bit. I appreciate that. But today, this is going to be beautiful, y'all. Oh, shout out to the caterers. The food was great, right? The food was great. Man, it's great asparagus and everything like that. Man. Now, if you was here, that was asparagus, wasn't it? I was making sure. I know my vegetables a little bit. I went to public schools now, come on. Now, last year, we met to discuss Housing for All legislative package and what it means for the residents in our great city. This year, we are back again to take it to the next level. It's going to take each of us in this room, it's all of us, all the way back over there, all the way back over there, take each of us in this room to continue working together to bring affordable, available, and sustainable housing to our rapid growing region. Now, real quick housekeeping, real quick. Throughout the evening, please make sure you have any questions to visit the city council table in the back. Where is that at? Right down there. There we go, right there. There she go, right there, okay. In the back, so you can make, when it comes to the process, it comes easy for the Q&A. We have the question and answer, and we have the panel up here. Now take a look at your programs, and I want you to read the bios of our amazing speakers as I keep talking to you. We got some amazing speakers up here, and they're so beautiful. They right up front right here. Got the name tags on, but everybody got name tags on. Shout out to everybody. I know everybody's name now. I like that. At the end of the event, there's a QR code and a link for you to take a survey and let us know what you thought. With that, now, if you was here last year, you know I do things just a little bit different. I like that. Yeah. So my guy Wilkos, okay, yeah, that's my friend. We play cousins and everything. I like when I introduce the people who's coming up here to talk on this mic, I like to give them a little intro music so we can have a little fun. You know what I'm saying? Loosen up a little bit. We already had the food. Time to have some fun and talk about this Housing for All Forum. With that being said, I need you to put your hands together right now. Please welcome this from... You ain't put your hands together. Oh. There we go. Thank you. Please welcome Councilmember, Chair of the Housing Committee, Shayla Favors.
Well, thank you, good sir. How'd you know I was a Beyonce fan? I need to stay focused. Listen, because Beyonce will get me distracted real quick. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. Oh, call and response, yes. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here with us tonight at the 2023 Housing for All Second Annual Forum. Thank you to my colleagues who have joined, Council President Hardin and Councilmember Emmanuel Remy for being here this evening, as well as my other colleagues who could not be here tonight but have been greatly supportive of this work. Tonight we come together to discuss what seems to be, with no pun intended, a hot topic across the country, and that is housing. Y'all didn't get my joke just now. It's really hot outside. It's serious. Housing is serious, but we gotta make it a little light. Anywho, access to housing provides stability, security, and a foundational platform for personal growth. It allows families to thrive, children to succeed in their education, and communities to flourish. However, housing cannot merely be a privilege afforded to a lucky few. It is a fundamental human right, and it needs to be treated as such. The concept of housing as a human right is rooted in the belief that every individual deserves a safe, secure, and a dignified place to live. It implies that governments and societies have an obligation to ensure that everyone has access to affordable, habitable, and secure housing. This includes protecting individuals from arbitrary evictions, preventing homelessness, and addressing housing discrimination. Over the course of the next 25 years, the Central Ohio region is expected to see a growth of over 726,000 people, with Franklin County set to absorb half of this regional growth. We have seen other communities let this growth overtake them, but that cannot be the story of Columbus. The reality is that housing insecurity is not evenly distributed across our population. And so whether we are talking about evictions or homelessness or poverty, housing insecurity disproportionately affects people of color, older adults, the disabled, and low-income wage earners. In Franklin County, approximately 54,000 low and moderate income households paid more than half of their income to housing costs. And among these households, 55% of them were Black households, a major racial disparity, since Black households only account for 24% of the overall population. This should not be the status quo. Housing policies and initiatives must aim to address historical injustices and disparities, ensuring that everyone has equal opportunity to secure suitable housing. As a community, we are truly at an inflection point. Do we accept the status quo? Do we accept the status quo? No, we don't. Or do we build more inclusionary and a progressive community? I'm with you. I am with you. So, housing has always been a top priority for me. And as you've heard, in 2021, I championed the Housing for All legislative package. And if you're not familiar, there were 3 ordinances that were intended to enhance the rights of tenants and provide opportunity in the search for affordable housing. This package included source of income discrimination, meaning you cannot be denied from a rental based on how you earn your income. It gotta be legal, y'all. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Renter's choice, which allows tenants the choice of how they make their security deposit and can now pay it in 3 months or over 6 months. And more importantly, rental receipt, requiring property owners to provide tenants with a written receipt for any security deposit payments and for all rental payments. To continue and to strengthen this work, earlier this year, City Council announced a 12-piece policy plan focused on building more housing units, preserving our current housing stock, and creating more opportunities for all Columbus residents. Included in this plan includes ideas like pay to stay, wholesaler regulation, and rent increase notifications, as well as programs known as the Accessory Dwelling Unit Pilot Program and Pathways to Home Ownership. The reality is that there is no silver bullet to fix the problem of affordable housing. However, with the Housing for All plan, City Council is acknowledging the challenges that this housing crisis presents and is outlining their commitment, our commitment, to providing tangible solutions to further protect renters, to build home ownership opportunities, and to increase the housing stock in our city. Tonight, we're going to hear from leaders on housing policies, the local landscape of housing, and possible solutions and resources. Additionally, we have a keynote address from Sonya Trauss, president and founder of YIMBY Law, also known as Yes in My Backyard, We know NIMBYism here in Columbus, not in my backyard, but we are going to embrace yes in my backyard in the city of Columbus. I am very excited for tonight's conversation, and so without further ado, I would like to welcome my friend, Council President Hardin.
I did that hug so I didn't have to dance up here like Shayla did. So, but I love you right now. Well, good evening, everyone. It is great to be here this evening. Would you help me celebrate, recognize Councilmember Shayla Favor? Let's do it first, and then. And I will tell you why. Under Chair Favor's leadership, we have been able to put some clarity in this conversation. We, under Councilmember Favor's guidance, we now talk about housing being for all of us. What that really is a boiled down declaration that housing is a human right. Housing is a human right that everyone deserves. And Councilmember Favor, since she has been on council, has made us so much stronger as a community, has made our policies stronger as a community. So many people can talk about, and folks are joking when we came in, well, this seems like a party. And it is a party, it is a celebration, but there is so much work, and there is so many times when Councilmember Favor is advancing legislation that is for all, where all people don't love it. And so part of tonight is bucking up the folks who have to make the tough decisions, encouraging them that there are folks who do believe in more housing. There are folks who do believe that housing is for everybody, and that they will support them when they put forward that type of legislation. So let's give it up again for Councilmember Favor. I want to recognize my colleague, Councilmember Remy. Certainly, thank you for your support of Councilmember Favor's work. To Columbus State, thank you so much for having us. Again, to our awesome panelists, I know each and every one of you. I know the work that you're doing in our community, and I'm so grateful. So excited also to hear from our speaker for the evening. So we all know that here in this region, in Columbus, we're going to add 3.1 million people by 2050. 3.1 million people. That's a lot of folks here in our city. And I've been thinking of it, and I've been talking about this type of growth in this way. We in Columbus have a tsunami of people coming to Columbus. A tsunami. We all know the idea of a tsunami. And the issue with this, in terms of how we're reacting to it, is that we are still on the beach frolicking around, playing around like there's not this wave of people coming to us. If we as a community do not take this seriously, if we in this community do not focus in on more housing, more affordable housing, we will be washed away by this tsunami of folks coming to Columbus. It is that clear. It is that simple. We have a designated amount of time, Columbus. We have a designated amount of time to get this right. And this is the thing. And now I'm off my talking points, and I'm done with my talking points. I am inviting all of us on a great, grand experiment. There used to be a question in Columbus, are we going to get bigger? That question now has been answered. Yes, we are going to get bigger. The question now is, can we get bigger and be better? That's the question. And it is the conversations that we are going to have tonight. It is the leadership of the folks on the panel. It is the encouragement from our speaker tonight. And at the end of the day, it is you. It is you that will help us make that decision. And why I call it a great experiment, I wish I could point to a city that has done this type of growth well, where it actually benefited the folks on the bottom and lifted them up, that actually provided more housing and encouraged affordability. But there really aren't many great places to point to. So the question again is, will you join me on this great experiment? Can we get bigger and get better? I believe that we can. I believe that we can, but we're going to have to make tough decisions. We're going to make hard decisions, have to make hard decisions. We can't just say, yeah, I love affordable housing, but it has to be over there. That does not work anymore in the city of Columbus. And so I am so excited about this conversation. For the rest of our lives, this idea of growth will be the number one thing that will impact all of us. And the exciting thing for me is that we have the faculty, we have the ability to shape this thing for our city. Let's do it. Love you guys.
You took my papers too.
Oh, my bad.
Y'all see Council President's socks? Man, I thought I had some nice socks. They got the vote socks on them. It's nice right there. Man, I gotta get a real job and start making some money. With that being said, next to the stage is the Senior Vice President of Community Impact for the United Way of Central Ohio to give us an in-depth presentation. I did it, my fault. On housing trends for the Central Ohio region. Following this presentation, our panelists will join him on stage. Please join me in welcoming Mike Wilkos.
Thank you, my friend.
Here you go. Here you go.
Love you, man.
Love you, man.
Thank you. All right. So I always like to get a good read on who's in the room. Hi, neighbor. By a show of hands, how many of you as a kid grew up in Franklin County? Raise your hand. Okay. All right, lower those hands. Does everybody remember Goldilocks and the Three Bears? All right? And there are 3 different temperatures of porridge. So think of porridge, but now we're going to put housing. And we're going to do a little pop quiz. How many of you think the cost of housing in Columbus is too cheap? Raise your hand. Who thinks the cost of housing's just right? And who thinks it's too expensive? Wow. Well, that's the next platform to run on, because you're going to get 100% of the vote. All right, so why would United Way of Central Ohio be up here this evening? We invest resources in 90 nonprofits, and they are entirely focused on basic needs and student success. And while the nonprofit sector has always struggled to meet demand, there's a new struggle that they are facing, and that is their employees. So what are we hearing at United Way? Nonprofits are saying we're offering job opportunities to young college graduates, and they say, thanks for the offer, but I can't live in Columbus for what nonprofits are going to pay me. Or nonprofits that are now having to do employee assistance programs for their workers who are struggling with their housing, or employees who are moving almost every year to avoid those rental increases. So as a data nerd who loves maps and charts, I'm going to take you there with me. So let's go. The issue about our city is that we are rapidly growing, and I want to put that into perspective and in the context of what that growth is doing to housing. I love this quote from a longtime Chicago Tribune columnist when he says, our dilemma is that we hate change and we love it at the same time. What we really want is for things to, remain the same but get better. And for those of us that did not grow up in Columbus or from somewhere else in the state of Ohio, raise your hands, right? You're not used to a lot of growth. And so now people are starting to see this growth of the city is not always having a positive change. Could that growth be good for me, but not good for my neighbor? This is how many people have moved to this region since the 2010 census. Anybody want to just shout out some numbers of what you think should be in that next box? What happened to the rest of Ohio as we added 263,000 people? The rest of the state lost 20,000 people as we added 260,000. If you look at the growth of the region, it's only been growing slightly faster by each decade. But for those of us that live and work here in Columbus, it sure does feel like the growth of the city is on an upward trajectory, and it's because of this. If you look at that second from the right column, just 43% of all of the metro growth happened in Franklin County between 2000 and 2010, but go to the far right, After 2010, 70% of all of the growth in the 11-county region happened in one county, Franklin County, as the growth of the region rapidly started to move inward. I believe that's because we have a diversity of housing you just can't find in Union-looking Delaware and Fairfield counties. And the demographics of who we are don't need those 1-acre lots with the big single-family homes. 2020 census, City of Columbus, 906,000 people. We just had the fastest percentage growth in 70 years, and measured in a numeric way, it was the largest increase in people ever recorded in Columbus history in a decennial census. That's how significant it's been. If you didn't know this, we were the first city in the country to be created by an active state government because there was no city here. They created Columbus to be a state capital, and we grew how? Through this great little tool called annexation. And what did it do? It resulted in a city today that is the exact same land area as the city of Chicago. There are 11 school districts within the city of Columbus, and Columbus is in 3 counties. And it has meant that places like Tuttle, Polaris, Easton, and Rickenbacker, all of that growth of jobs on the urban periphery has been captured by our tax base. So every year, every decade, Columbus, Ohio gets that AAA bond rating, which means we have the best credit rating in the country. Because like clockwork, we're going to grow. But that past has ended. In the last decade, we only grew by 1.5% in land area, but we squeezed 119,000 people into the existing city. No neighborhood in Columbus was unchanged by what we just went through. Columbus is now going vertical. Why? Land prices, housing cost. This now pencils on paper. It's changing our urban neighborhoods, scale and density, parking and massing, race and culture. Everybody's got this kind of change. It's happening in the suburbs. Look at that picture in the top right. That's Dublin's Bridge Park. It was a single-story strip mall, lasted about 15 years. And now it is a sea of mid-rise buildings, with the later phases now going 10, 12, 15 stories. There's 2 simple things driving the entire change of the built environment. If you are an empty nester, you no longer want that 3,500, 4,000 square foot house in Dublin, but you might want to stay in Dublin. You're going to Bridge Park. If you're young and single and you want an active lifestyle, you're looking for those 5/1s on Long or West Broad or North 4th Street. Lifestyle and convenience is reshaping the built environment right before our eyes, supported by demographic shifts in who we are. If you look at this chart, go to the very bottom. Growth in America slowed by 26 percentage points, and between 2010 and 2020, growth in America was the slowest it had been since the Great Depression. Go to the top of the slide. While growth in America was slowing, it increased by 50% in Columbus, it increased in Franklin County, and the growth in Ohio was entirely pulled up by us. Put this in perspective, there's going to be 44 more people in this county when you go to bed tonight than when you got up. And every year, we have to build more than the entire city of Worthington every 12 months. The problem is we've only added housing for 10,500 people every year, which means every single year, like clockwork, we add an entire Groveport that no one built a single unit for any of them. And that chronic underbuilding has now caught up and woke us up during COVID and gave us the housing crisis that superhero favors. I mean, Councilmember favors. You are a superhero, by the way. There needs to be a new movie about you. I'm going to give 2 neighborhood examples of what just happened. Linden is a growing neighborhood for the first time in 60 years. 11 of the 12 census tracts in North and South Linden are now adding people. For someone who looks at data, I was really excited about this. And clearly, there has been an investment in Linden, as evidenced by the new Linden Rec Center, which was a huge investment. There's 2,600 more people living in Linden than 10 years ago. And I thought, wow, this is the first evidence that Linden is turning the corner. But when you go a little deeper, you see that Linden actually lost 4% of all of its housing units. I have never seen this in Columbus data in the modern era. How is a neighborhood losing housing units but adding people? And it's what all the nonprofits have been telling United Way for years. As people get evicted, as young people can't start housing when they're young, if you just feel insecure about getting your own place, you're living doubled up. And where is that happening? In disadvantaged neighborhoods. It's not happening in Bexley or the Short North or Clintonville or Dublin. It's happening in the neighborhoods that are already struggling. And in Linden, there was a huge reduction in vacant and abandoned housing. There's 1,100 less vacant structures in Linden than in 2010. And while the city of Columbus was focused on blight remediation, 400 of that 1,100 were demolished. That suggests, through a little sloppy math, that about 700 vacant properties in Linden sprung back to life. But what we know from Columbus Dispatch analysis, that was not because Linden residents were buying a vacant unit, renovating it, and building equity and wealth. It was out-of-town real estate investment corporations that are doing what? They're looking at the big high-level numbers, they're looking at the rental increases and the growth projections, and all of a sudden, Linden pencils for a developer, just like those big tall high-rises do for downtown. Here are just two examples of what has people in Linden on edge. Look at those price jumps. Clearly, those were distressed properties that are getting renovated and then staged by a developer, but both of those properties are within feet of Cleveland Avenue in South Linden. Now let's go to Northland. Every single neighborhood along Morse Road, 161, Carl and Mays, every census tract in Northland added people. In fact, Northland added more than the entire city of Bexley within its boundaries in just 10 years. And like Linden, there's just 484 additional housing units that somehow supported 13,700 more people. How are you doing that? One, Northland was the epicenter in the reduction of vacant and abandoned housing. There's a picture from Google Street View in 2011. When the housing market collapses in 2006, 7, and 8, developers just boarded up and walked away from entire apartment complexes. 10 years later, go back to Google Street View, it's back. That's paint and carpet. That was easy. The number of units up 1%, occupied units up 7%, people up 15%, more people per unit. Every single decade since the end of World War II, there have been fewer and fewer and fewer people living in the typical American housing unit. In Columbus, Ohio, that stopped and reversed itself in the last 10 years because of this housing crisis. And why wouldn't Northland and Linden behave this way? Because in every single direction as you leave those neighborhoods, you're bumping into employment bookends. And they're all adding jobs 7 days a week, some of those places 24 hours a day. If the growth of the region's accelerating, if the growth has moved inward and there's not enough housing, why wouldn't Northland and Linden respond this way? We all know this in this room. We're chronically underbuilding. No one knew that phrase about 4 years ago. This is very new for us. Construction did start to surge during the pandemic. 2020, 21, and 22. Last year was the most amount of construction in 17 years, and it wasn't enough. We were stuck at 9,000 units every single year for a decade. If you don't build 14,000, you just fell behind. And we fell behind every year for a decade. If we're going to dig our way out of this, you know, how many times do you hear people say, I'm going to live in all this stuff I see going up? The answer is you need to double the amount of things you see going up to dig us out of this hole. Compare Columbus to other markets of our size. Raleigh added 1 unit for every 1 job every year for a decade. We added 1 housing unit for every 3 jobs every year for a decade. So here's where we are. Critical scarcity of units, the likes of which we've never seen before. In 2010, there were 107 units for every 100 households. That's a healthy market, which means at any given time, 7 units are sitting available. You get to 2020, we were down to 102. That's the very reason why it feels so tight. There's only ever 2 units available at any time, right? If we don't change what we're doing around construction, here's where we're going to be in 2030. We think we have a problem now? Wait. This doesn't even seem intuitive, right? Well, how could there only be 96 housing units for every 100 households? That doesn't seem to make sense. Every single American city, from Austin, Texas, to Denver, to Salt Lake, go over the Rockies to the Pacific Ocean, every one of those has already been there for a long time. Who's number 1 in that problem? Well, first of all, here's where we are now. This is May of this year, median home price in our region. In red are the communities in the top 1/3. In light blue is the middle tier. And in dark blue are the lowest tier communities. These price points don't match our incomes. And here's what's happened with appreciation. What do you notice about this chart? The boxes in dark blue have higher appreciation than the more expensive communities, because as Dublin and Powell and UA and Grandview got really expensive, it pushed more and more buyers into Columbus neighborhoods and into, oh my goodness, Whitehall. Look at Whitehall, which, by the way, is growing for the first time in 50 years. Every elementary school in Whitehall, full capacity. Governing Magazine, about 6 weeks ago, published a national story about a dramatic shift in behavior, and they focused it all on Columbus. And what they said, in just a decade, the amount of income you need to earn in this region to afford the median price of a home jumped 52%. Went from 2.7 to 4.1. Columbus, Ohio has the same housing to income cost burden as Chicago. And here's what happened. In 2010 to 2011, in the blue are all of the places Metro Columbus pulled people from, because everyone's coming to Columbus from somewhere else in the state. And in the first time ever, Columbus just lost people to other parts of the state, because the MSA, Metropolitan Statistical Area, is now losing existing residents to the counties just outside the metro. So what does this mean? It means if we can't get our income to housing cost under control, it's going to push that sprawl further out of the metro. And if people are only driving into work 2 days a week, they're going to go, I don't even know what's on the other side of Marysville, right? But they'll live in Mansfield because they only have to drive to Polaris 2 days a week. They're just going to leave the metro. And we have some of the best farmland on planet Earth, and I don't want to lose it to low-density sprawl. What's also happening is the scarcity means we're losing the supply of non-subsidized affordable housing because those landlords are just racking up those rents. What we're adding isn't what we need. Land, lumber, labor all runs high. What that means, we've seen our rents jump 56% for a 2-bedroom apartment since 2016. Scarcity and demand are out of check. This scares me. Here's the eviction data. Last year was the highest number of evictions ever filed in Franklin County, and if every one of those evictions had happened, the entire city of Dublin would have been evicted last year. But what happened was there were resources available. So the writs of restitution, or the red tags on the door, didn't go up nearly as much as the eviction filings. And the thing we really want to pay attention to, how many people had someone from the sheriff's department show up and put their stuff out on the street? And out of 20,900 filings, that happened to just 744. One is too many. That was the lowest ratio of set-outs as a function of filings we've ever seen. And when the Biden administration just did another round of money to do eviction protection, they gave more money to Columbus and Franklin County than the entire state of California. Why? Yes. And why did that happen? Because it was a performance-based contract, and no other community in the United States did a better job with their nonprofits in getting that money out the door than here. All right. Oh my God, I feel like I'm at church. All right. Los Angeles has the worst ratio of units to people in America, and they got 63,000 people living unsheltered out in parks and sidewalks every night in LA County. That's all of Dublin and Worthington sleeping outside. Did anybody read CNN yesterday? The state of California spent $17.5 billion in 48 months on homelessness, and it only went up and up and up. Why? Because California has 2.5 million fewer housing units than what the size of their population needs, because they haven't been building enough housing for decades. They will probably never fix this. Hawaii made legal camps, or made settlements like this, legal camps, because they don't know what to do in Hawaii either. There's 1,900 mapped camps in Portland, Oregon. People come here from the West Coast, they say, oh, do you even have homeless people here? Yeah, we do. You don't see them like you see them in other cities, but you're going to hear from Shannon and Isom with the Community Shelter Board in a minute. And what's been happening in Columbus is not a good sign. This is 5 doors down from my house in Wineland Park. I've lived in my house for 15 years. I've never seen people sleeping in my neighborhood park. I see it now. What the Community Shelter Board and the Continuum of Care just released weeks ago was a huge increase in the number of homeless, but it was a huge increase on people who are experiencing homelessness who are unsheltered. This is staggering, and it's unsustainable, and we better get a handle on it. So here's what the census tells us. I didn't go into all these details, but I'm going to share them all anyway. Growth has been consistent with past decades, but it is moving inward. Neighborhoods have been losing people for decades. North and Linden, they're on the rise. Huge increase in diversity across the region. White households are moving into urban neighborhoods, but without kids. All of the growth of Franklin County is due to diversity. We're not building enough housing. A huge decrease in vacant housing. And these price jumps that you're seeing in rents and home costs, it's going to stay. Here's some quick snapshots. 9th and High, 2010, same shot 10 years later. East Long heading into the Near East Side 10 years ago. Now, where Wineland Park and Italian Village meet. All over the city, we're seeing this. And it's causing friction, right? Don't put it there, it's too tall. Not enough parking, right? Too many units, too dense. All over the city now, I drive around and I see what? Anti-housing signs in people's yards. Sharon Woods in Northland, right? Fighting Airbnb. Oh, I could go along with that. Salem Village on Sinclair between Morse and 161, they want to stop a rezoning. Everybody knows this one, right? German Village, Schumacher Place, a couple inflatable whales. By the way, that picture is not to scale. And did anybody see this picture in the Dispatch in May? Okay, Berkshire Township next to Sunbury, one of those greedy developers is going to show up and build, God forbid, 91 single-family homes on 88 acres with a starting price at $550,000. And the neighbors next door were furious. I'm going to paraphrase 2 quotes from nearby neighbors. 91 houses, 88 acres. How could anybody love their yard when it's so small? Said Jane Doe, who lives on 5 acres in a 6,000 square foot house. Another person living next door, in reference to these homes that start at $550,000, says, well, we don't want those people. They'll just be transients. They won't really be committed to the neighborhood. Okay, folks, if you can vilify an acre lot at probably $650,000, what do you think happens when City Council has to vote on affordable? A registered nurse with 2 kids qualifies at 80% AMI. A construction worker alone qualifies at $50,000 a year. And any one of us who's ever gone out to dinner just had contact with someone who needs a 40% AMI unit, and those barely exist. Every one of us, every day, comes into contact with affordable housing. Here's a sign in my front yard. Density means diversity, thank you. More neighbors is more fun. Apartments are awesome. People over parking. If a developer wants to build a 5-story building in my neighborhood and offer not one parking spot, go for it. Because I want to build the city of the future, not the city of the past. No doubt, Intel, Carmenton, right? Nationwide Children's, Wexner Medical Center. That's just 4 examples that each have thousands of big paying jobs. A home is where a job goes at night. Now, I'm not suggesting if you don't have a job, you shouldn't have a home. But if we're going to be really successful with Intels and solar factories and hydrogen battery cells and Honda, we better start building a lot more housing. It's already been said we're going to be at 3.15 million. That's probably conservative. And it means we got to build a lot more housing. More of it, more compact, more dense, more diverse. And I'll be very quick. There's 4 things that have me excited about this city. Every one of us needs to get on that bandwagon and link us past next fall when it's up to us with the voters. A $9 billion transportation plan. The zoning code update, that's another meeting. It's underway. That bond package that we're going to talk about in a little bit, Columbus has stepped up to the plate, but we're only 43% of the region. Others have to step up too. And of course, Superhero Favors has already talked about source of income. With that, let's get this panel up here. I'm going to be joined by a great panel of 5 people. Come on up and we'll start doing some introductions. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
He comes to next week. Okay.
I could listen to you talk.
Oh, thank you.
Might be over here. Okay.
Oh, here, where are my questions? Now I need to find my
I
questions.
almost wore my navy blue blazer. That would have been amazing.
All right, we are joined this evening by a panel of 5, and we're going to start at the end here with Erin, and they're going to do a quick introduction of who they are.
Alrighty, my name is Erin Prosser. I'm the Assistant Director for Housing Strategies for the City of Columbus. My job broadly is to wake up every morning and think about housing and answer the challenges that Michael's laid out tonight and think about how we as a city can make and produce more housing of all types while we also invest in the affordable housing that we need in our community and support the most vulnerable amongst us. And so we are working really hard at the city to become that modern place, right? And to do our business in a way that supports that growth, in a way that makes us that better city. So I have that privilege in the city of Columbus.
My name is Letha Pugh. I am a small business owner. I am also a recent graduate of the Affordable Housing Trust Emerging the Developer Accelerator Program. I hope Lark's not here. And I just recently purchased my second property, 5th in Cleveland. I am also part of Cafe Overlook, which is a workforce development program at the county courthouse. And I won't go into all the things, but that's it.
Good evening. So my name is Andrew Dyer. I am a senior policy advisor for Columbus City Council. So work for all 7 of the council members, soon to be all 9 of the council members. And my focus is on housing, zoning, economic development, and education.
Hi, I'm Shannon Isom. I am the CEO and the president of the Community Shelter Board. I am one of those people within the last 6 months that have moved into Columbus. Grew up in Cleveland, so I've known a little bit of growth. You kind of, a little bit of growth. What I do every day is as well get up, but instead of thinking about how do we solution for housing, which I do think about that, I instead make sure that my mind's eye is for our most vulnerable, the homeless, those that are on the verge of homelessness, and those at any point in time are in imminent danger. I am a servant and a disruptor, and I'm happy to be here.
I'm Mike Primo, and in addition to being the president of the Michael Wilkos fan club, I am the executive director of Community Development for All People. We do a bunch of work on the South Side and in other places to help people experiencing poverty, to provide direct assistance, but also to help people overcome systemic barriers so they can achieve their hopes, dreams, and aspirations. That takes a variety of different forms, from our free store, which gives away gently used clothing and household household items to 20,000 people a year, to our All People's Fresh Market, which gives healthy produce and other food to over 350 to 400 families a day. And in addition, we and our partners have developed over $130 million in affordable housing over the years. So it's a lot, but there's always something great happening on the south side.
Awesome. Thank you. The first question is going to be for the entire panel. Then we're going to have some targeted questions for each of them. We will be opening it up, so be thinking about a question that you might have for anybody here on the panel. And by the way, if you're not hearing a panelist with the volume of their voice, someone in the back raise your hand, and we'll know what that means to get the volume up. So the first question is, what role do community organizations, nonprofits, and private sector entities play to develop innovative solutions and strategies for tackling the housing crisis in Columbus? Any one of you can start.
Well, I'm closest, so I'll start. One of the things that I think we do, and we do really well, is building what we call relationships of mutuality with people in our community. They're not clients, they're not customers, they're not problems to be solved or nuisances to be abated. They're human beings, they're part of our community, and we know that every single person in our community has a role to play. Whether you're the head of the nonprofit or you slept on the street last night, everybody has a role to play. And so by providing that atmosphere of what we call radical hospitality, we are able to build these relationships of trust with people experiencing poverty or people experiencing homelessness, to get them connected to resources, and they know that we're going to walk alongside them for the long, arduous task of getting a place of their own, keeping a place of their own, getting a job. And I think that that's really important as we do this work across the board, is we build relationships with people and we stick with them over the years. So once they get into a housing unit of their own, we're not done. We stay in contact with them and make sure they're doing well. When they're on the streets, we make sure, whether we provide our warming center during the winter so they can get off the street on the coldest nights, we work with them. Ms. Kim Hairston over here is our community connection coordinator. Her whole job is to work with people on the verge, on the margins, and help get them connected to resources. And I think that's what makes us very successful.
I'll answer quickly. I think innovation is really going back to just really simple things. I find that when we sit at tables, we're trying to be so creative and so innovative that we lose the essence of why we're sitting at the table. So innovation is grace, and it's kindness, and it's commitment, and it is impact. For some of us in the room, and you said it, Michael, it is prayers and it's humility, and it is connecting with outcomes that we see. It is inexcusable to have the level of development and have poor people getting poorer. Innovation would be us saying that. Innovation is, I believe, then a space that is activated, that becomes so human-centered, and I've said this before, that we are upset, that we are so upset that it doesn't quiet us because, it's not on the agenda. That it doesn't quiet us because we don't know the solutions yet, but you can't talk about it. That we don't call people out for the meanness, for the separation, the disparities and the marginalization. I think innovation is just being in community and the calling of that. For the people in the room that are called to community, that's innovation at tables, I think. I know. I'm glad I had to follow you.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm like,
All right, Andrew. Good luck. Good luck.
Rack it up.
Is there a next question? But I will add to that, as a small business owner and as I've become more successful with my businesses, I think to be that person that has a keen sense of, because I work with people and I see their struggles, what can I do to help this situation? And when I bought the building at Parsons and Whittier, Bake Me Happy's at Parsons and Whittier, I bought that building thinking I could build up someday. I'm not there yet. You got to crawl before you walk, but I'm doing all the things I need to do to get to that place. At Cafe Overlook, I wasn't really involved in housing. And we had some employees who came in, they were amazing. They trained people, we love them, they love on us. And there was one woman who, at the end of the day, I saw her unpacking her locker.
Yeah.
And I asked her, what's going on? I see you have all these bags. And she said, sometimes I sleep on the bench at night. And the three of us, Matt, Sang, and I, we automatically went into, we've got to fix this, because I can't change the world, but I can do these little slivers of working with people and showing that they care and having the dignity piece. And we have housed, out of my own personal pocket, I'm running back and forth, I can bridge the gap until I can get them somewhere to get some help. And I think that's the missing piece. I think people fall through the cracks and then it's hard for them to figure out the next step. I've been able to do that through Cafe Overlook with the support I've gotten from the public sector. So that public-private, it can work. And I'm thankful that I have folks that believe that what we are doing is worthy and continue to support us, because alone we couldn't do it. And so I'm very thankful that I have people in my corner that let me dream and say crazy things, but also they see the outcome. And the outcome is we are housing people. I just bought my second property. I have one unit that I keep for Cafe Overlook. And that will be a place where people can land, and then we help them get to the next level. And we'll just keep doing that one at a time, you know.
So from a policy perspective, I would just add two things. One, for-profit, nonprofit development, we need more development. We need more housing, right? Michael already has those slides up there that talks about it. And we oftentimes focus on growth. We focus on what's going to happen over the next 20, 30 years. We're already behind. So we have to catch up in order to even get to the point where we have to develop more to stay ahead of the curve. And so that needs to be normalized in the sense of we don't have to develop for growth. We have to develop for what we're already missing and then develop for that growth. And I think from a community organization perspective, we need to start having conversations about turning that NIMBY into YIMBY type conversation, because you think about it from your perspective. Even if you're in a market rate unit, who wants to have a new development pop up and have a bunch of people say we don't want those people, right? Put anybody in their shoes and ask yourself if you'd like to be treated that way for a new housing development. And so we really need to understand, because those community organizations could be one of the best assets we have at the city level, which is they welcome folks into their community. They integrate into the community, and it becomes this mixed income community, which any data point you can look at shows the greatest growth in the development itself, growth in value, which creates generational wealth. It's the best type of development is that mixed income community, and we need to do a better job with that.
So Erin, I want to move it over to you then, because by a supermajority, the voters of this city just provided a $200 million bond package for affordable housing. So talk with us a little bit about what is the city exploring, what are some of those strategies, and again, if you're thinking about your questions, you can already begin to submit those questions to the Columbus City Council table in the back of the room. But tell us how we're going to spend and leverage those dollars.
Correct. So we had the opportunity in 2019 to put forward a $50 million affordable housing bond to the voters. And they came forward and said, yes, we would like to give this a shot. We'd like to see what the outcomes we could see from this type of an investment in our community. And it turned out that we were able to leverage those funds to create 1,300 new affordable units in the city of Columbus. And it leveraged more than $350 million of other private and public dollars to bring those units into our community. They become the final gap filler. I think we've talked about it, we'll probably talk about it. Construction's expensive, and it is just as expensive for the folks that are delivering affordable units as for the folks that are delivering our market rate units. And so as we begin to fill those gaps just get increasingly large. And so the opportunity to take our bond dollars and put them in the project and get that project across that finish line is extremely meaningful. And so in those 3 years, we showed the outcome, and we feel like it was really powerful. So we went back to the voters and we said, what about $200 million? And voters said, by more than a supermajority, yes, let's do it again. So we had the opportunity to take that $200 million. So right now what we're looking at is looking at what we learned from that 2019 bond package, but also some of the needs in our community in addition. So of that $200 million, we'll send $80 million of it to leverage that new affordable rental, right? The folks that are coming into our community, working in our community between really around that 60%, averaging around that 60% area median income level, and build those units with our partners throughout the community. The second piece is preservation. We think a lot about the fact that affordable housing is new construction. We have a lot of partners and a lot of tools that give us new construction as an opportunity, but we have a lot of naturally occurring affordability that exists in our community that using some of those bond dollars, we could just lock it in and be ready tomorrow. Right? We don't have to wait that construction period. So we've set $40 million aside for that preservation opportunity. $50 million of it to support affordable home ownership. A lot of times when we talk about affordable housing, we really think about rental alone. And we know in this community that you're up north of about $119,000 of household income to be able to afford the average house in our region. That cuts out huge number of families in our community from that wealth building and the stability that comes with home ownership. We have an amazing partner like the Community Land Trust that is working really hard in our community to deliver housing that's affordable, and really the outcomes are showing that they're focused on the folks who have historically been left out of that wealth building opportunity, with 75% of their buyers people of color and 65% of those women-headed households. The final $30 million, as we look at the challenges that our community is facing and the increase in number of folks experiencing homelessness in our community, we set aside $30 million to support that permanent supportive housing for those folks coming out of shelter, those folks that need that really intense housing effort and help. We're going to set aside $30 million focused on that population. Council, I think on Monday night, we were able to look at the 2023 capital budget. 23 capital budget? Okay, I always forget how the cycle, is it 24?
24.
24, dang. We're in 23, we're looking to 24, where we were able to allocate the first $50 million of that $200 million to deploy in the community, get it out this year, start spending those dollars to get those units turned back around into the community. So you'll start seeing a bond sale in the near future, and then we'll start deploying those resources as well.
So let's stick with the City of Columbus and go to you, Andrew. In March of this year, City Council laid out some new initiatives around housing. Why don't you tell us what that looks like?
Yeah, so 12 initiatives that really focus on what the work that Erin Prosser and the administration is doing already with the 3 categories that she talked about earlier. The deviation there, I think, with the leadership of Councilmember Favor is we're really focusing on tenant protections, individual tenant protections. And I think that's kind of, we're looking at the investment, we're looking at the development, but we're also looking at how we protect renters, both getting a unit and then being able to stay in that unit. And so obviously it's from Housing 1.0, but it passed successfully 2 years ago as source of income discrimination. I was listening to a podcast this morning from Texas, and they have groups all across the state that are advocating for source of income in cities and statewide, and they really don't have a lot of it. There are a few municipalities across the state that have passed legislation, but the majority do not. And it is such an important piece of legislation in Columbus to have someone be able to go up to an apartment complex and not see a no Section 8 sticker or something at the window, which we still do see, even though we have legislated and it is law. So I think that's one of the most important pieces to that tenant protection. And then, we talked about pay to stay, which is allowing a little bit of extra time to get some third-party payment assistance, some emergency rental assistance that we have. So while we have it, we might as well utilize it in the best way and the quickest way possible.
So Shannon, as we think about people in our community who are experiencing homelessness, every year the federal government has every community do what's called a point-in-time count. Share those numbers, but I'd like for you to talk about what did that point-in-time count reveal for this community, and beyond just a housing unit, what are those other things people experiencing homelessness need so they can be stable in that housing?
Yeah, let me first say that every community does a point-in-time count. We all do it across this entire country in the month of January, and it's because it's cold, and some of us, depending on where we live, are also experiencing some of the coldest months with not a lot of resources. So it's important to do it all at the same time. I also like to think of it, as I think about this community, is that it takes a moment for us to pause together to think about our most vulnerable populations. This community, with the Community Shelter Board, which I believe is not only an innovative partnership, but progressive and contemporary, that is put together government, private dollars, as well as the business community together to make for this response every day where we're thinking about the most vulnerable populations. But in that also, we have to say then, why is this level of growth? I mean, 22% to all the way to 46% of those unsheltered. Why do we see, for those of us who are thinking about it, and you've given us the ability to think about homelessness every single solitary day, moment by moment, that we're seeing increases? Why is that? Well, there's several reasons why that is, and we heard the first one. It is because we have a lack of housing. I'm going to be straight. It's not also that we have a lack of housing. We have a lack of housing for people who are poor. That has to just be called out directly. I am old enough to know that I grew up in a time in the 70s. Not only was it normal in some of our cultures to live with each other, I still do. That was normal. Not only was it normal that if you had someone with a disability, a mental health episode, that they came and lived with you, that was normal. That was normal.
Yeah.
But on top of that, urban communities had places for poor people that were struggling to go. And urban communities also had a palette for that. We knew how to take care of the people who are alcoholics and or ill or disabled, and in that community we watched out for them. Whether someone planned it or not, we knew where they were. We had flop houses and YMCAs and YWCAs. We had those things in our community. We don't have any of that now, you see, because we're so bougie. So bougie. And everybody has to have a little bit of everything, you know, because we define dignity in our own middle class way, in which poor people can't be poor and thriving. You know, we don't have that anymore. Well, I'm telling you, I came from a community in which we had that. And so if you hollow all that out, and then you say Community Shelter Board, respond. Well, I have to respond with the tools the government gives me, and those tools keeps us subsidized and unhealthy.
Yeah.
Ooh, I'm not trying to preach, but I'm just telling you all that there's a lot of things there for this increase. And it is hard to talk about one thing because there's a multitude of things for those of us who are old enough to remember communities that cared for themselves regardless, that we had churches and things that cared for us and kept us safe, even in poverty and in mental health and in disability and in lack. And we have none of that.
Yeah.
And it is all doled out in grants and contracts, and it keeps us busy responding and compliant and reporting out. Keeps us busy, so busy we can't take care of each other. And then we don't have grace anymore and love. Kindness, because you see, poverty is ugly, and see, if you have people coming in from the suburbs who don't want to look at it, then it becomes uglier. And you believe it. Then you believe something's wrong with you. Those that are mentally ill or moving through drug addiction, we think something's wrong with that. That's normal in communities. How we take care of it is the abnormal way that we're doing currently. Okay, what'd you ask me about the point in time conference?
I am ready to go wherever you lead.
It is higher. It is higher because I think we are using one way of solving this thing, and that we have to start looking at ourselves differently to figure out, do we have enough palate in communities to see things that look unsightly to us. And that in that unsightliness, it calls spirits, I think, people that will take care of people. That it probably is hard for us to imagine people that are mentally ill but are cared for. Right? It's probably hard for us. I believe everyone needs to have housing. But we have to have another level of diversity in housing. Here's my fear, is that this city is becoming so beautiful in its urban spaces that we are becoming more and more and more intolerable of poverty. And where do they go?
That's right.
Where do they go?
Yep.
Well, they're going to have to come to shelters. And shelters are not healthy for us and children. It's not healthy. Yeah, who said that?
Be more creative.
Be more creative. So, yeah, there's lots of things that are contributing to the point.
Woo. Let's go to you now, Letha.
Oh, thank God. Thank God. Time number two.
And I'm going to you because you are a co-owner of Make Me Happy, and one would not typically expect someone like yourself to be in a housing panel.
Right.
But you represent a lot in your space. And you also are in the EDAP program. So talk about what drives you to this room tonight.
Right. Some people know, some people don't know. My mother had me when she was 15. Mm-hmm. She had my sister when she was 16. I grew up in the house with my aunts and my grandmother. I, by the grace of God, made it through college. Here I am. And when I think about how hard that I've worked, it comes to me it's just an innate part of me that I want to help. And I want to help my community. And I also love business. I have a knack for it. I have a skill. I want to take advantage of it, but I want to do business in a way that works for everybody so that everybody wins. And so part of the Emerging Developers program, it brings people in and teaches them how to become developers. I used to ride by a empty lot and I go, oh, they only want $5,000 for that lot? I'm gonna buy it. I had no idea what goes into doing something with an empty lot. Yeah. And so they've taken that and turned it into a person that is excited about the fact that I can pencil out a pro forma and the numbers work, and I can keep people's rent at the same rate. If it works now, it works for me in 10 years. And if I can keep people housed and they're able to pay their rent, I have to sign a land use restriction agreement. That doesn't bother me at all. What I want is for people to have somewhere to go at night. I have a young man in one of my restaurants who he ended up being unhoused, and he was super distracted at work. And I explained to the supervisor, have you ever worked somewhere or been doing something knowing you don't know where you're going to go tonight? Your mind is not, we've got to get people stable in housing to be able to even be able to work or function. And so I'm happy to step in and fill that role or be one of the small pieces. I'm not a big developer, but I'm on my way. I feel like I'm putting the pieces together. I'm able to put my hands on the people. I see one here, Karina, she knows policy. I grab her, I got her, and I'm pulling her along, and teach me and show me, and I will do it. If I could go back to school, I would have went to construction. I'm a project person. I like to think, this is where we could be. This is the start. This is where we end up. And that's what housing is. But housing is expensive. Very. And so for somebody like me, I take my little bit of coins and I try to buy something. The EDAP program allows me to stretch my coins a little further. So I only put 5% down. I only have a 2.6% interest rate. That's what someone like me, who's kind of in the middle trying to figure all this out, can do with the support. And that's federal money, city, county money. And there have been 20 of us who've gone through this program. We call each other. We're supporting each other. I'm actually working with, I don't know if any of you know Jeff Woda with Woda Cooper. I am like shadowing in their office and learning how to become a developer. And if that's where I end up, I got about 10 more work years in me before I get my boat and I'm fishing. So I'm gonna work really hard for the next 10 years and we'll see where it plays out. But I love affordable housing. I grew up in HUD housing. I used to take, I would take my mom, I was the one who would pay the bills. She'd send me downtown. I'd pay all the bills. I'd go get the money orders, and we would pay like $23 a month. Yeah. But we were living off of like $293. Damn. That's not how you live. Yeah. I didn't live. I grew up in Omaha. I never went to a baseball game. We never really went out to eat. And so as I've gotten older, I have a responsibility, and I'm happy. I'm good with it.
So I'm going to turn to you now, Mike. You may not be a Casto or an MI Homes, right? But you are not a small developer. And talk with us a little bit about the partnerships that Community Development for All People has created on the South Side to do the production that you've accomplished over the last 20 years.
Everything that Community Development for All People does is based on the idea that if you want to go far, you go together. We don't claim to be the smartest people in the room. We don't claim to have all the answers. As a matter of fact, I usually have more questions than I ever have answers. And our partnerships are really important for that. So our biggest partner in our housing work is with Nationwide Children's Hospital. We have a joint collaborative called Healthy Neighborhoods, Healthy Families, which builds a lot of single-site housing on the South Side, and at the request of the city, that HNHF is now branching into the Linden neighborhood as well. So I think that's a big, and that's one tool in our toolbox. Another is these multi-unit complexes, these so-called low-income housing tax credit deals that we do with private developers like the Woda Cooper Company, where we take a minority stake in the project, and they do the heavy lifting in order to build a number of units. And we have several of those private developer partners that we've worked with over the years to build these really amazing multi-unit complexes that help provide a variety of different 2-3 bedroom units to give people a safe place and affordable place to live. And I have to say, one of our greatest partners is the city of Columbus. I mean, it is phenomenal to work with people who get the issue. We don't have to do any education for city council members or for the city of Columbus. They get it. They want to help. They're enthusiastic partners. They're passionate partners. I wish all levels of government were equally in on what was needed and willing to step up to the plate, because as I tell folks all over the place, the city can only do so much. And if the state government is not willing to step up in a big way, if federal funding fluctuates by which administration is in the White House or which party controls Congress, that is not an effective way to actually build the housing that is required to meet this population boom. So our partnerships are incredibly important, and also to do that creativity where we're looking. We have a proposal that we're shopping funding now, which is to build a multi-unit structure right at the corner of Parsons and Whittier, and it would be mixed income, where you would have some low-income units that would be subsidized by some more market rate units, which I love for multiple reasons. A, it would allow us to build more affordable housing, but B, it commits to the two things that I really think are fantastic, is density and diversity. I live on the South Side. I live just a block away from South High School. My neighborhood is incredibly diverse. I grew up in the suburbs of Detroit, Royal Oak, Michigan, which was as which was as lily white as you could be, and middle class, and there was not a lot of diversity. But luckily, I went to an elementary school where we brought in kids from the city of Detroit, and that's how I learned the importance of diversity over the years. And I'm glad to live in a city that understands the importance of diversity and does its best to reflect it.
So we're going to wrap up this panel real quick. I'm going to have a final question. I want a 30, 45-second focused response from each of you. Where do you see opportunity, and where do you see your role contributing to that opportunity? Who wants to start? They're stumped because I said 30 to 45 seconds.
That's what it is.
Yeah, that is what it is.
Okay, Erin, go ahead. Let's see if you can do it.
I think I'll start just in terms of the opportunity that I think we have here in Central Ohio, not just the city of Columbus, but the fact that we're having these conversations as early as we are. And we look at the other cities waited until the crisis had reached really at some point, I talk about the fact that in Columbus we kind of have three groups of folks. We have our most vulnerable, and they are currently in crisis, right? All the statistics that Michael shared are pressing down on those that are most vulnerable right now, and they are in crisis. There's another band of folks that are challenged by our housing market. They want to get into home ownership, but they can't do that now with our housing prices. Their rent continues to go up, and they're figuring out how they're going to be able to pay it, or how they're going to figure out how to repair their car while that rent continues to go up. And then there's a group of folks in our community that really aren't feeling it right now. They bought their house in 1990. Right, they're kind of not really part of the challenge that we're facing, and they're not in other cities. Those folks were kind of dominant in the conversation, and they let the crisis get to the point where they were deeply impacted before they acted. And what I see in Central Ohio is we're not waiting for that point. We're acknowledging that there is a crisis in our most vulnerable, that our working families are challenged by this housing market, and we're doing things to act. The public, private, and nonprofit. And you're telling me I'm at 30 and 45 seconds. So that's what I've got.
60 seconds.
I probably did. And I talk fast.
You took mine.
Anyway.
I think I've got a quick, the opportunity is there are so many incredible organizations here in Columbus that are doing the work every day, whether it's building housing, keeping people in housing, trying to get people into housing, trying to keep them safe while they're looking for housing. There are all these amazing organizations that are doing the work and are ready to scale up when the money flows in. So but that's the opportunity there, is we've got the workforce ready to do the work.
Thank you.
My opportunity, I'll be quick. My opportunity is that I see us as hitting in prevention so that ultimately people never slide into homelessness. But if they do, getting them housed quickly, and that being a full system versus shelter only. What is my part in it? I want to compel everyone to say yes. Yes.
So my opportunity realistically is you start to see this groundswell of support. And so what we really need to do at this point is the ideas that we deem as creative housing ideas, those need to become normalized. Those are just the normal ones. Those are the ones we can do every day. The off the wall things, the ones that are a little bit more fringe, or the ones that take a little bit more conversation, those need to be the creative ones. Accessory dwelling unit pilot, 2 architects of it sitting right there. That needs to be just a normal thing, but we're having to create a pilot and make a big thing for it, which is going to be great, and the outcome will be great, but that needs to be an everyday thing, and some of these other things need to come into that creative space.
And to add to that, the change in the zoning, I think we are at a pivotal point. I think we have an opportunity to really shake things up and change some systems that have been in place for a long time. We've just got to be brave and willing to do it.
So I have failed my role as a panelist to leave enough time for a dialogue with all of you, but those individuals that have specific questions, we want to make sure that specific question goes through Councilmember Favor's office for a direct response. We want to get on with the evening, so Sonya has time to come up on stage. Please give a warm welcome of thanks to our panelists. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you. Can we go?
Yeah.
Great.
I feel like I didn't get any music.
Where's the music? Now we got it.
Yeah. So beautiful, don't you agree? I tell you, when I tell you that Mike Wilkos is the GOAT when it comes to this housing things, man, give him a round of applause. Man, that was a great panel. And Miss Trauss, I said it right? I said yes. Yes. She was so anxious to get up here, she just started coming. I was like, wait a minute, we gotta bring you up the right way. Okay, so the information being shared is amazing. It's my honor to introduce our keynote speaker, Sonya Trauss, who is the executive director of YIMBY. Her bio's in the program. And just want to make sure, like Councilmember superhero, Shayla Favor said, that if you don't know what that means, it means yes in my backyard. And today, Sonya has traveled all the way from the Bay Area. That's how they say it, in the Bay Area. to be here in our backyard today. So please put your hands together right now for Miss Sonya Trauss.
Oh, good. There's a timer up here. All right, but I'm going to have my own, too. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. I honestly, when I first got this invitation, I wasn't sure why I was being invited, but I now see this is like a scared straight presentation. I come from the bad place where we're never gonna make it, right? Michael's like, you're never gonna solve your problem. I was like, oh no. So yeah, I'm actually from Philadelphia, and I lived in St. Louis for a little bit, and I wound up in California like many people do, you know, looking basically for work. In 2011, the economy was terrible, but in the Bay Area, there were still jobs. So we were swelling, you know, me and many people like me were, we're causing a housing shortage, really, although there had always been a housing shortage for a long time. I was working as a high school math teacher and living in West Oakland, which is right next to San Francisco. And what I was seeing, and people I knew we were seeing, is that, San Francisco was exporting its housing shortage. You know, when people are displaced from San Francisco, they were moving to West Oakland, and we felt like we can't compete. And we wanted San Francisco to do its part. And so I started organizing people in San Francisco, outside of San Francisco, wherever. We went to the Planning Commission meetings in San Francisco, and we spoke in favor of everything that was on the agenda. We were like, yes, it's 100% affordable, it's 5% affordable, it's market rate, anything. You guys need to do everything. And we were so frustrated because, I mean, San Francisco doesn't just export its housing shortage to Oakland, it exports its housing shortage to Austin and Portland, you know, all across the country. It has huge impacts. So they needed to take responsibility for all of their job growth and build housing, you know, for all income levels. And it turned out that that was very novel. It was novel, one, because we were speaking about projects that weren't directly in our neighborhood. A lot of people's idea of housing advocacy is like, if it's not in your neighborhood, it's none of your business and it doesn't affect you, but it definitely affects you. You know, we saw probably people already experience, you know, that your first choice neighborhood, you can't afford it anymore, you move to another neighborhood, or you're living in a neighborhood and people are moving in, or maybe you want to live closer to your job, anything. You want to live closer to your kid's school. Housing choices made all around your region affect you. And so you cannot let people who live in the neighborhood tell you that your voice doesn't matter if their failure to build housing is going to raise prices in your area. So that was the speech I was giving to people, and they were responding, and it was exciting. And I started out, you know, my group at the time was called the SF Bay Area Renters Federation, which was a funny name, and that was fun. And now, yes, in my backyard, I'm the ED of the legal nonprofit, the educational nonprofit, and we have a political nonprofit, YIMBY Action, and they have 40 chapters in 19 states. So it's a national organization, and we don't have a chapter yet in Columbus, but it seems any moment there might be. And you know, even if it's not an official chapter, there's many other pro-housing groups that have a similar philosophy, where they are supporting specific housing projects and calling for upzonings. So this talk isn't really about why housing is important, because it's totally been covered, but about where housing is important. And that's because that's always the thing, right? Everybody likes housing. Who's anti-housing? You know, what generates controversy is where. And you hear NIMBY say it all the time. Oh, you have a great program. I really support this, but this isn't the right neighborhood. You know, this neighborhood's like very special, so we can't do that here. But, you know, every neighborhood says that. So when I first started organizing, I was trying to explain to people that in every neighborhood, there will be some people that are against housing. It doesn't mean that every community is against it, but you'll always be able to find someone. And so if we're, you know, allowing people to say no every place, we never wind up getting anything. It's a kind of tragedy of the commons, you know? When you build housing, it's a distributed benefits, concentrated harms type of change, where the people who know about the harms, they already live there, they like the neighborhood the way they are, the way it is, they don't want to lose parking. Overwhelmingly, that's, I think people probably have experienced. Huge issues, parking. And the beneficiaries of the housing, like, we don't know who they are yet. We don't know where they live. The benefits are region-wide. And so we have a political process where, who do we ask? Should we do this housing here? The people right next door, who are automatically, definitely already know what they're gonna say. They don't need housing in that neighborhood. They already have housing in that neighborhood. Things are fine. So that's a setup that even if you have all the nicest, best people in your community, it's just gonna underbuild housing because you're giving the most decision-making power to the people who just structurally are like least interested in saying yes. And so that was another thing that was innovative about what we were doing, why it's important to encourage people to cross municipal boundaries, cross neighborhood boundaries, and say, yes, like our whole region needs housing, and my voice is important, and I feel empowered to tell you, decision maker, that you should listen to me. So we were, sorry, I'm just making sure I'm covering everything. So as activists, we're telling people, our region needs housing in every community. People want it to be built elsewhere, but we have to organize against these no's equally across neighborhoods. So that kind of came naturally because, why wouldn't you just say people should do things equally? Everybody's got to do their part. But the idea that housing should be built equally across neighborhoods is very controversial. Very, very controversial. I had many conversations where people were like, I'm with you, I'm with you, I'm with you. Oh no, I'm not with you. Don't agree with that at all. And this is controversial because by controlling access to housing, we control access to numerous other forms of social, economic, and political participation. You just can't get in. You can't maybe get the job that you want. You can't take advantage of the public services you want. You can't vote in the elections you want, if you're not in a certain neighborhood. Existing residents of high opportunity areas feel that they don't want competition for some of these forms of participation. And so they are gonna have a really strong incentive and feeling to try to block housing from, lower income people. And what's interesting, we had the example, lower income people is relative. So you can have very rich people trying to keep out people who seem also pretty rich. But that's, there's not, we might think that there's like a class war and there's one, dividing line, but there's actually millions of little dividing lines, and everybody is fighting the people right below them, and everybody's trying to get to the next level above. Some people call this opportunity hoarding. It's a good thing. I think this phrase has started to enter the political consciousness. And I really truly believe that this is a false scarcity mindset, and probably everybody here also believes that, so I don't have to convince people. I think that more is more. But what this implies is that we have a very powerful and exciting way that at the local city level, we can be part of the fight for wealth redistribution. So during the last election, we had Bernie and Liz Warren talking about a wealth tax, and that's good. And I voted for Warren, although most people didn't, so maybe I'm embarrassing myself, I don't know. But I liked her wealth tax. And I think a lot of times people feel really powerless locally. They'll say, well, how can we get something like that? There's billionaires, and how can we really make a difference? Well, it turns out you can actually make a huge difference because at the local level, wealth redistribution isn't about taxes and then spending on vouchers, right? Like cities don't give out Section 8 vouchers usually, although there are some programs, maybe it wasn't a good example. But, it's not so much about funding Social Security. What it's about, the way that we redistribute wealth at the municipal level, is by investing in infrastructure. And so what that means is that if you believe in wealth redistribution, then you have to support integrated neighborhoods. It is part and parcel. It is the same thing. We see a lot in the Bay Area, probably you see it here too, neighborhoods that are deep blue, that are so liberal, but then they can't quite get it together, to support even just dense market rate housing, much less, subsidized housing. in their neighborhood. But, you know, maybe if we can explain to them that this is part of the same, this is the same issue, right? That if you support redistributive tax policy, then at the local level, since we are, you know, investing in infrastructure, schools, libraries, rec centers, clean air, areas that aren't next to industrial noise, right? This is how we do wealth redistribution locally. And so integration, economic and racial integration, is part of that wealth redistribution cause. So like the Bernie Our Voices chapter, they should be on top of this, right? They should be helping support housing at the neighborhood level. So yeah, this exclusion, it works with land use laws and with the entitlement process. I've heard that you guys are doing a rezoning, which is extremely exciting because it's a huge opportunity to put some of this in practice. So here, hold on, make sure, okay. So with the laws, you know, obviously the, you know, density restrictions, right? You say 1 lot per acre, or sorry, one house per lot, and then the lot is huge. That's you know, very straightforward, low density zoning. But also, you know, FAR, setbacks, minimum lot size I covered, parking minimums. You know, there are some ways that are a little bit hidden. It's not as obvious that these are things that are making it hard to build the density that we need. The way that low density zoning, specifically, just to, you know, make sure everybody's on the same page, the way that low density zoning makes housing expensive is by forcing people to buy a lot of land in order to live in a neighborhood, right? You want your 1,400 or 2,500 square foot house, you don't need more than, I don't know, another 1,000 square foot lot or something. That's pretty nice. But if you live in one of these large lot neighborhoods, they're like, no, you also have to buy a ton of land. And so it works as a kind of, you know, an entry fee, and it keeps people out. So this is why, you know, higher density zoning can facilitate people who have less money being able to live in a neighborhood and make it more integrated. So the other thing, it's not just the laws that frustrate integrated neighborhoods, but also the process. Subjective standards invite corruption, right? Because, you know, you have rules that say, like, you can build this multifamily or this duplex, but it has to be in neighborhood character. What is that? What is that? You go to your city council person or the planning staff, and you're like, I think I did it. And they're like, oh, but you didn't. I don't like it. No. So it invites corruption. I don't know if you want to Google, like, LA council person arrested. 2020, 2021, 2023, LA council people have been arrested, and you might think, oh, there's a lot of council people, right? Maybe that's why there's 100 council people. No, they only have 5 council people. And it's because their system is so, it requires the dispensation of the city council person in order to build. And so there's so much pressure for developers to just bribe and for the city council people to take it. I actually think this is kind of an underappreciated aspect of process reform, is that these subjective processes, like, they sound good because residents feel like they want their voice to be heard, but what really winds up happening is you have a breeding ground for corruption, because you don't, you know, as the developer, you don't have anything to point to. You can't just say, look, the height limit's 45, my building's 44, I did it. You know, instead it's like, do you like it? And so then you have this corruption. It's a big problem. And then, you know, public hearings take time and bandwidth from the local government. They favor the least busy people. They can elevate small numbers of people whose ideas may not, frankly, be representative. So you have maybe heard that everything contains the seeds of its own destruction. And I do believe that that's true because we did it, right? YIMBYs, we used the process. We couldn't change, I couldn't change things at first, right? I wasn't in a position to change any laws or change any processes, but I see what NIMBYs do. They go and they say no, and so I organize people to say yes. All that public process that people use to say, I don't want this, you can use it too. And local NIMBYs will teach you how to organize, right? You can see their flyers that say, I hate this building. You can make a flyer too. They say, come to this meeting to oppose this thing. You can go to that meeting and to support that thing. We had a funny thing happen. There was a kind of a Google group, right? So, if you have people that agree with you, get yourselves together on a Google group or WhatsApp chat or, whatever. So there was some pro-housing folks on a Google group a few years ago in Oakland, and it was kind of sleepy. And a woman was going around, door knocking, flyering, saying, let's oppose this 40-story building that's going up right next to the BART station, our train station. And so they started coming on. They're like, this lady wants me to go to this hearing against this project, but I'm for it. And, somebody else was like, yeah, I saw her flyer. And, I was on the group. So I was like, guys, let's do it. Let's go and be in support. And so more than a dozen people actually went in support. And the woman, we were testifying, this is great. And this woman the person who was organizing, she testified and she was like, I don't know how all these people found out about this. I don't know if the developer came and was telling people, or they plants or something. And I was so happy because I went after her and I could tell her, she told us. She told us. So they will do some of your advocacy for you as long as when the advocacy lands, people know to invert that message. Because a lot of people will get a flyer and it'll say, go oppose this project, and they say, well, I'm not opposed, so I'm not going to do this thing, right? But that's actually information about how also to support it. The other thing is, just in general, is like you want to be visible. I put some stickers out outside. I also have these, so you're here. If you can just take one and pass it down. Because that's the beginning of everything, is that you see a sticker like this on somebody's water bottle, you'd be like, great, I agree with you. You become friends, you get on that WhatsApp chat together, and then you can start to organize and you can make yourself heard. And it's exciting that, I can't stress enough, it's very exciting that you have a zoning change coming up because YIMBY's, like, we can't just passively support whatever proposed housing comes along. Because historically and today, communities generally try to accommodate increased population growth by upzoning the neighborhoods where the residents who are in opposition are not listened to. Right? So it is important, of course, to support housing as it comes along. And that can help you build capital, build political capital, and a list and a community. But you also have to get out there and make some structural changes and try to make sure that your zoning really is equal across the city. There's not really a reason why there should be some low density places and not others. It actually doesn't make sense. If a place is healthy and safe for housing, it's healthy and safe for multifamily housing. There's really nothing so special about any of these low density neighborhoods that they can't accommodate a few apartment buildings. So good luck, everybody. I just have, just be visible, get your signs. I know Michael already has a sign. Support housing with emails to electeds and commissioners. Give public comments if you can. It does not take a lot of people. You have allies inside the government. That's why I'm here, right? Somebody from the government was like, we actually like housing. So you might only come with 1 or 2 people for the housing and there's 10 people against, but by you being there, the commissioner is able to say, we've heard from both sides. And it's such a better position for them than literally no one liked this housing idea, So you're gonna make all the difference. Get in community with others who agree with you. And then also, I only touched on it for a second, but I think it's very important for us to think about whose complaints we legitimize and whose we delegitimize. Because a lot of, when you're imagining, like, wow, we're going to try to upzone the single family neighborhoods, like, what are you imagining happening? These homeowners who bought their houses in 1990, who really aren't affected, they're going to feel really sad. And there's a lot of ambient belief that that's important. That on the one hand, we want to stop homelessness, we want to stop crowding, people need have access to all of the opportunity, but on the other hand, there are some homeowners that are gonna be super sad about it. And like, I have been so surprised how many very intelligent and with it people have said like, this is a hard political problem. Is it? You know, is it? Like, we decide every day to dismiss people's issues, especially if you work in politics. Cranks will come to you, right? And, or, you know, this guy was trying to talk my ear off about his divorce. And I was like, it's a serious problem, you know? And it's not part of what the local government does. So in whatever ways, we have to be creative, but how can we explain to people, like, it is true when you have a certain expectation of your neighborhood, it's not met, that can cause you stress, that's a real feeling, but that doesn't mean that that feeling is gonna be something that the local government's gonna help you with. So I'm so excited for Columbus. I think you guys are going to be awesome. It's totally true. You do not need to go the way of San Francisco. You can get a jump on it. You have a jump on it. I think in this room, you know, is really all the people we need as long as you tell 10 friends. And get your stickers. All right. Thank you so much, everybody.
I got you right here.
Okay.
Good. You're welcome. Give it up for him one more time, y'all. What an amazing event. And with that being said, let's welcome back the superhero, Councilmember Shayla Favor.
Can you all join me once again in giving a round of applause to Sonya as well as our panelists? So going off script just a bit, we had 7 questions that were submitted this evening. What we're going to do and what we're going to ask is if you submitted a question, if you can go off to the side, or Sindipti is in the back. We're going to ask you to, nope, I'm lying. We're over here to your right on both sides. And we're going to record your question if you're comfortable recording your question after I finish making my remarks. And then we're going to record the question. Everything will be posted on social media. We want to make sure I operate with transparency. And so because we ran out of time and we respect your time, we want to make sure that we get you out here on time, but also that those questions are asked and answered. Is that cool with everybody? Let me also extend my deepest gratitude to our community partners who hosted a resource table tonight, to Columbus's own City News. Did I get it right? DJ Dev Draper. For making it such a fun atmosphere for us to learn together. And Council President Hardin said that, I think it was Council President Hardin that said that, well, it feels like a party. This is heavy. Like this is heavy work, it's heavy conversation, and this is personal for me. You know, Michael's presentation, it hit home because that is also my story, right? My husband and I purchased our first home right after President Obama was elected, right off of Mock Road. And there has never been a time where we have not had 1 or 2 and sometimes 3 people living with us. And he's here. Am I lying? No, you're not. So when we, and still got one, right? If anyone's looking for a 24-year-old. It's personal from me because I'm from Dayton, Ohio. Come on, 937. I'm from Dayton, Ohio, and my grandparents owned a historic home in the heart of Dayton. That home should have been a tool that created generational wealth for my family. And yet, it has only become a tool of generational debt. This is personal for me because our families have gone through foreclosures. Our families have gone through evictions. Our families have experienced homelessness. So when I bring passion and you see this energy, it's not made up. It is authentic. And the time is now. We are talking today about one singular subject, but housing is not a singular subject. Because you cannot talk about housing without talking about all of the other systemic issues that go along with it. I literally just had a conversation yesterday based upon the City of Columbus's rezoning work. And we have been focused on educating folks about redlining and our city's history in redlining. And you can't just focus on redlining without also talking about the communities that have been greenlined. Many people in this country, in this state, and in this city believe the bootstrap mentality that I got here because I pulled myself up by my bootstraps. The reality is that generational wealth has been subsidized in this country from its inception. If you know the history of housing, I had the opportunity to teach a course at Denison University that talked about the history of housing, and I entitled it Ghetto by Design. Exploring race inequity in urban communities. You see, people think that if you live in an urban community or the hood or the ghetto, it's because you're tired, you're lazy, or you don't care. And it couldn't be further from the truth. Or that if you live in the suburbs, right, that you're somehow better than others. And so I stand here before you today completely off of talking points, but with conviction that the time is now for us in Columbus to do what's absolutely right. That if we are going to be who we say we are, that Columbus is for all of us, then it needs to be for all of us. And that we have to continue to have these conversations that are not speaking in code. That we are saying what is everyone's, what it is. But what is an experience? It might not be your experience, but what the pandemic taught us is that it could be your experience. And so I'm going to invite you to lean into this conversation with us. Get engaged at whatever level you are comfortable with, whether that is serving on a civic association or serving as an area commissioner or coming down and providing testimony. Hopefully, I will be able, along with my colleagues, to pass 6 more pieces of housing legislation before we go on break in August. Is it going to solve our crisis? It will not, but it is a step in the right direction. So I don't care if you oppose some of it or if you agree with some of it, just get involved. Give us your suggestions. We will meet. I will meet. Let's create and work together. It's going to take all of us. So whether it's you with your partner, inviting folks to come in and live with you, or working with a nonprofit organization, or just volunteering, we all have a part in correcting the injustices of our city, our state, and our federal government's racist practices. And so I just want to say thank you all from the bottom of my heart for being here today. We have a lot of work to do. I'm going to Sandeepji, don't get me. I'm just going to fast track my comments here. They were so eloquently written, but I felt it necessary to really address the party notion. because that quickly it can change the environment. And I want us to leave here not depressed but inspired, motivated to do what we can in our own atmospheres with our own platforms, encouraging people that yes, in my backyard is what we say in Columbus from this day forward. I'm going to ask my team, and they're going to hate me, to please come up. Yes, Sandipti, yes. Tyler, where's Tyler? My intern, there he is. Jennifer Walton, and everybody is with Sky Nile. Where are you at?
All the way.
Our Sky Nile team. This, you all have no idea how much work it takes to put something like this together. And so I want to extend my appreciation to everyone who has lent a helping hand, that is working to educate you all every single day. If you're not following Housing for All CBUS, please start following us on Instagram. This is just the beginning. We're going to keep going harder. We're going to post those questions for you all and the responses for you. We're going to be soliciting your ideas, because that was also something that we had planned. If you've got them, let us know what they are. What else am I missing? That's it. Okay. And we're going to end with the African proverb, right? If you want to go fast, if you want to go far, go together. Thank you, everyone.